once again to our show that is called Real Shame. It's a show where we, us two guys, this guy right here, and me, watch movies from our movie list of shame or movie blind spots. Basically movies that we haven't seen that, or one of us haven't seen, that we're fixing and we're recording it and we're putting it out there to YouTube and a podcatcher for you guys to pay attention to. Yeah. I'm Adam.
I'm Andy.
This week we're watching some movies that I have not seen. And to kick us off with the first movie, I'm going to hand it over to my wonderful co-host, Andy, to tell you all about that.
All right. Young Lila Lee runs away from the comfort of her home with the Reverend, intending to meet up with her father, a notorious gangster, but instead, she runs into a mysterious vampire woman in Lemora, a child's tale of the supernatural. Ha 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 ha.
Hello, 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 hello. My name is Lila Lee. I'm 13 years old. I live at 38 Sycamore Street. I don't want to stay here anymore. I don't want to stay here anymore. Let me out! Let me out of here! Let me out! Let me out! Let me out of here!
So Lemora, and it actually has like a bunch of different alternate titles.
Yeah.
But the DVD copy that I have is Lemora, a child's tale of the supernatural. So that's what I'm going with. Although, as we'll see later in the show, Leonard Maltin refers to it as something else. I mean, piece of shit, really. That's what he refers to it as. This is directed by Richard Blackburn. It's written by Richard Blackburn and Robert Fern. This was the only film that Richard Blackburn ever directed. He was at least looking at his IMDb filmography, he was partly an actor. He did do a few things acting-wise, but also didn't have like a huge career there. But this is basically the only movie that he ever directed. It stars Cheryl Smith as Lila Lee, and I always get confused. Like I always think she plays Lemora, but Lemora is actually not her character, even though the title of the movie is Lemora.
But
that's
the
not
protagonist is not Lemora.
The protagonist is Lila Lee, but Lila Lee is played by Cheryl Smith. Cheryl Smith had a bit of a career in the 1970s and the 1980s. She acted in some exploitation films. She acted in some like horror films. She's in Phantom of the Paradise, Brian De Palma's Phantom of the Paradise. She's in Vice Squad in the 80s. She's in some other movies. She also had a tiny music career there for a time. She was associated, from what I read anyway, with the Runaways briefly.
Oh.
She apparently sings backing vocals on the Joan Jett song Bad Reputation. But Cheryl Smith lived fast and died young. She died at the age of, I believe, 47 in 2002 because I think she was hooked on drugs for quite a while.
Say yes to drugs, kids. Say no to drugs.
Say no to drugs, exactly. Richard Blackburn, who I mentioned wrote or co-wrote the film and directed the film, he plays the Reverend, who's like her guardian, basically, in the movie. Lila Lee lives with the Reverend.
And he's part-time Colonel Sanders.
Yes. Yeah, he does have a suit, very much like Colonel Sanders. That's true, a white suit. Leslie Gilb plays the titular Lemora. And the only other person that I mention or will mention is High Pike, plays the bus driver. High Pike, first of all, I don't think his real name was actually High Pike, but he was in Blade Runner. He plays Taffy Lewis in Blade Runner, and he's also in the terrific low-budget 80s film Hack-A-Lantern, if you've ever seen that. He's done some other stuff,
Have you
too,
seen Hack-A-Lantern?
I have. It's been a hot minute. But
okay, I've never heard of it.
Yeah, it's just a cheesy 80s slasher film. So this is a movie that I have actually seen before. It's a movie that you have never seen.
Never heard of.
Well, most people have not heard of this.
Yeah.
This is not a very well-known film. It only has a DVD release. It has no Blu-ray release. And the DVD was put out by the Synapse Films label. And they, from what I read, apparently said they have no intention of putting it out on Blu-ray. I don't know why, but they don't.
Sell.
Maybe not, yeah. So it only has a DVD release, and I don't think it had a DVD release until 2005 or something like that. I actually rented this. This is one of those movies that I rented on a Netflix disc when I first signed up for Netflix back in the day. Yeah, I heard about this film. This was back in the days of the IMDb bulletin boards, and I would get all kinds of ideas from people back then. And so I heard about this, and I was like, I must rent this film. So I rented it. and I now forced Adam to watch it. So Adam,
Right.
you didn't know anything about it. You never heard of it.
No.
What did you think about Lemora?
I really wanted to like kind of like this movie, and but it's just if. But I really ultimately did not care for the movie that much. It comes off as a very like TV movie of the week kind of movie, kind of like when we did Home for the Holidays.
Yeah.
It's just like the way it's shot, the way it's kind of rendered, all that kind of stuff. Although it gets kind of, I feel like it gets a little risque at a few points where you're like, are we gonna see? We're gonna see stuff because like she's like bathing and all that kind of stuff and like covering herself, but it's just like, where's this movie going? It's like it gets, even like Lenore is like, it feels like she's attracted to Lila Lee a little bit. She is, but not for vampire reasons, more for like romance reasons.
I think she is.
Okay, cool.
Well, it seems like everybody in the movie is attracted to Lila Lee, right?
Well, I mean, I don't think the Reverend was, but I guess Lemora was telling her that the Reverend was.
I don't know
because she had the dream, but I don't think like he actually. I don't know. Maybe I miss. You've seen it more than me.
Yeah.
So for me, it was just kind of like a. It was just kind of a miss because it was more TV movie, and also it just felt like the movie was like, oh, we're gonna do this, we're gonna do this, we're gonna do this. Like she gets to the house, she gets kidnapped, and you're like, okay, this is interesting. Like I don't know where this is gonna go. And then you meet Lemora, and you're like, okay, this is kind of an interesting. Like we have our antagonist now, and see what's going on. Then all of a sudden she like escapes, and then it's like, oh, we're just gonna jaunt through the whole city and show you like little clips and little like vignettes of what's going on in the city and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, I like this is not really adding to the movie and all that. So you lost your notes. There you go. So for me, it's just kind of, and then we get back, and I just feel like it, does she kills Lenore? No, okay, I'm thinking of the next movie where she kills the person. Does she kill Lenora in this?
No.
Okay, yeah. And it's just, I don't know. Just for me, like, it just kind of, it just feel like it peters out a little bit at the end. And it just wasn't, there wasn't a lot to it to me, So it was just kind of like, I don't know. It just really didn't, nothing in the movie, like, there was nothing in the movie for me to like sink my teeth into and really get excited about. So it just didn't really kind of work for me, and I wasn't
sink
a big
your
fan.
Teeth into like a vampire.
Like a vampire.
Yeah.
All right. I mean, if Lenora or Linda Lee could sing better, maybe I'd like the
her church choir singing.
Church choir singing.
Yeah.
I don't know. So for me, it was just kind of like it's one of those movies that I'm like, I can now say I've seen it, but there's nothing like redeeming about seeing it in my book. So.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna toss it over to you. So you, someone on the IMDb message boards either put this movie on there and was either trolling you or was really excited about it.
They weren't trolling me. I mean, this movie, like a lot of movies, I think has a cult following for sure. I will say the first time I saw this movie, I thought it was okay, and the second time I saw the movie, it's basically just okay to me. I tend to give movies like this a little bit more leeway because it is the guy's one and only movie that he did, Richard Blackburn. So, I have a feeling that he really had an idea that he wanted to put on the screen. He co-wrote it with Robert Fern. He directed it. He acted in it. He was really, really responsible for bringing this thing to life. From what I read, they had a showing of it because it was filmed in California. They had a showing of it in California. It did not. It was not well received in the few theaters or whatever that they put it in, or the one theater that they put it in. So they cut a lot of it out and then it was re-released. So it was shown originally in 1973. I think it finally got a bit wider of a release in 1974, but it never went anywhere. This was basically a drive-in movie that never really went anywhere. I agree with you. I think to me it looks like it's like a Sid and Marty Krofft like TV Saturday show, but a bit darker than something you would see on like that. But the makeup and everything that people wear, because you have Lemora, who's basically a normal vampire, and then you've got like these mutated kind of vampires that are running through the woods.
And her dad,
they're basically all just, you know.
Yeah, and her dad turns into one of those vampires, but he looks more like a werewolf, or acts more like a werewolf.
Well, and that's the thing. I think they're supposed to be vampires, but they look more like werewolves to me. So it's like, are they werewolves? Are they vampires? Like, but I think they are supposed to be vampires that basically went like Gollum. Like they got so obsessed with something or other that they just they go crazy and they start to look all mutated and stuff. But it's kind of weird. I mean, the movie is a bit tedious. It definitely, the acting is not great. You could tell that most of these people are first time actors and actresses, including Lemora, the lady that plays Lemora. I don't think she's that great. I don't know if she was the first time actor or actress, but I don't think she's that great. I don't think anybody in this movie is that great. And again, I don't love this movie. I think it's okay. It's obviously, a bit metaphorical. It's supposed to be kind of about a young girl's coming of age, sort of in a way. But I don't think there's anything in here that's like really offensive or anything like that. But it's a bit tedious. When she finally does, I think towards the end of the movie, she's like getting chased all around. That feels like it goes on forever.
Yes.
To me, I was like, are we gonna wrap this up anytime soon? But I mean, I'm kind of somewhere in the middle with this movie. Again, I don't know that it's some lost classic. I think it's an interesting kind of curiosity. And I think if you like kind of watching, basically we've described it as this low budget TV looking movie. If you like this sort of thing, and if you vampires and stuff like that, it might be more up your alley. I think I'm obviously a little more favorable on it than you, but I don't think it's just some long lost masterpiece that everybody should see. When I was watching it, so it came out again. It was released in 1973, at least in one theater. And I thought of another movie that came out also in 1973 that I also read about on the IMDb bulletin boards back in the day. I miss those things, by the way. If I haven't said that before, I do. Yeah, they took them away years ago. They got rid of them. But I like them because I got a lot of good ideas.
I wonder if they're archived
from that. I'd love to look. But there's another movie, another horror kind of film that came out in 1973 that it had some people in it that were more well-known. And the people behind it were a little bit, they weren't exactly Richard Blackburn, but it goes by different names. It's called Messiah of Evil is the title that I know it the most as. Another movie that I saw probably around the same time that I saw Lemora. I rented it from Netflix. I also own it. It actually has a Blu-ray release. I own it on Blu-ray. And it's funny because last month in October, they're showing a lot of horror movies on TV. I was out in my garage, like putting some stuff up, and I've got a TV out there, and I just had it on some movies channel, like that I get for free, like over the air antenna. And Messiah of Evil came on, and I actually watched a good chunk of it. While I was doing stuff. I was like, yeah, it's been a while since I've seen this, but it's another kind of low budget movie, horror movie, that may or may not make a lot of sense. And is a bit tedious at times, but I think they kind of go together well in that way. They're not, I don't know if they're long lost classics, although I think people are a lot more crazy about Messiah of Evil than they are about Lemora, but I don't know that either one of them is like a long lost classic, but they're both kind of interesting early 70s curiosities, if you're so inclined. All right. The only note really that I put on here was there seems to be a lot of ADR from Lemora. There's a lot of re-recording.
I didn't know if it was like sync issues, like when they're recording things.
It may have been that, but there would be times where a character would be talking, and I was like, there's no way they re-recorded that because they don't. That doesn't sound natural at all. It was almost like you're watching like an Italian movie where it was done like a spaghetti western where it was dubbed after the fact, something like that. So there's a lot of that which I found a bit distracting. But anyway, so it's okay to me. It's okay. This movie's okay. It is 83% fresh on Rotten Tomatoes, but I should clarify it only has 6 reviews. It only has 6 reviews. So take that with a grain of salt. The audience score is 58%. Leonard Maltin, I looked up Lemora. He says, see Lady Dracula. I looked up Lady Dracula, which is the title.
And he said, see something else.
He said, see this big bomb that I'm giving Lady Dracula. He hated it. He couldn't stand it. No Siskel and Ebert review for this, so I plucked the IMDb score, which is 6.2 out of 10. Yeah. It's higher than some.
Yeah, I don't know if you can trust that.
Yeah,
Because you have some people are like 10 and some people are like
most
1.
people are. Most people are either 10 or 1.
Yeah. They only want to talk about if they really love it or they really hate it.
Yeah, exactly.
There's no like middle ground.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know that I would recommend this movie to that many people. More than anything, I wanted to pair it with a movie that we're going to talk about Wednesday because I do see some similarities in them as far as both about young girls kind of coming of age. Both have kind of vampires in them, that sort of thing. But I could have really done them in either order: Monday, Wednesday, whatever. But yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, that was Lemora, Child's Tale of the Supernatural, or if you're Leonard Maltin, Lady Dracula.
Lady Dracula.
Bomb. On these Monday episodes, we like to talk about what we've been watching. I let you start last week, so I'm going to go this week.
Alrighty.
I'm going to mention 2 things that I've watched. One was a movie from the 90s that we watched starring Dustin Hoffman, Sharon Stone. That was Sphere, the Michael Crichton
Sphere,
based movie. It was, I think I remember liking it when I was younger, but this movie is just okay. It's, I mean, maybe a little bad. It's just like of those like Deep Blue Sea, of the Event Horizon kind of movies like that, like of that ilk. So like, I guess I'll give that more credit just because there's probably nostalgia tied to that 90s era kind of movies and kind of like B movie, I would say almost.
Yeah.
So in that, it's interesting. I would be curious to read the novelization. Have you read any Michael Crichton books?
I read the Jurassic Park. I read both of the Jurassic Park books because I think he only
Jurassic
wrote
Park and Lost World.
Yeah, he only did the 2, and then I read Time something. There's some time movie that came out. They made a movie of it in the early
Time
2000s.
Cop.
What is it?
Time Cop.
No, not Time Cop. I don't remember what it's called. It's not Time Code.
Time After Time.
And then I read Prey,
Okay.
but I never read Sphere.
Okay.
And I never read the Andromeda Strain.
And Congo was.
I never read Congo.
I would be curious to read it just to see. I've only read Jurassic Park because I was obsessed with Jurassic Park.
So the thing that I remember about the Michael Crichton novels, Michael Crichton was like super smart. Like he went to medical school and all that kind of stuff. So I always found his books to be highly intelligent, and they were always about some kind of sciencey thing. And he always made it super believable, even when it wasn't. I always enjoyed that aspect of it, right? Like reading, like I remember reading Jurassic Park. I think I read Jurassic Park before I saw the movie.
And you're like, Dino, DNA.
I was like, this is awesome. Yeah. I was like, what did you say? It's a Unix system. I know this.
Yeah. It's like a walk in the park.
But yeah, the 90s, it was like Jurassic Park was massive hit. So they're like, well, let's find all these other Michael Crichton novels.
Let's do Congo.
Let's do Sphere. So they definitely
Drama Strain.
milked that for all it was worth.
Yes,
and none of it was as good as Jurassic Park, I guess.
It was not. So it's interesting. Like I said, it's if you want to get on some of that nostalgia train, go check it out. Like I said, I think, like you said, it's kind of clever. There's like some I think the basis of it is interesting, at least. The other thing I watched was the movie I know you watched was Barbarian.
Yeah.
I think overall I like Barbarian. There's a couple twists in the movie, and I feel like that might be a little bit of a spoiler. The movie takes some turns and kind of keeps you guessing a little bit, and that makes it fun a little bit. But I think the first third of the movie is a really well told, really thrilling kind of horror movie. And part of me kind of wishes that he kept with it and he didn't kind of diverge.
All of me wishes that.
Yeah. But even though it took some twists and turns, and the first twist I kind of liked, I was like, okay, we're going to go with this. And then the other twist, I was like, oh, okay, this is weird. But I think overall it's a lot of fun. It reminded me a lot of Malignant. Was that the James Wan movie we watched?
Reminded me of that as well.
So I don't know if that's spoiler or not, but if you like that, this movie is kind of like that too. So I think overall I enjoyed it. I didn't went into it completely blind, did not know anything about it and read anything about it, and I was pleasantly surprised. So I had fun. Not the way I would do it or not the way I would have it, but the way it is, I kind of had fun with it.
Yeah, I went into it completely blind. I'd seen the poster of it, and I knew that it was getting buzz.
Yeah.
But I really didn't know anything about it. But I ultimately was disappointed with it. I will say, in the days after I watched it, my harshness on it lessened a little bit, but I
Yeah.
still don't really like it overall.
Totally.
So, but I totally get why people do like it.
Yeah.
Like it's not one of those movies where I'm baffled at the good critical reception.
Yeah.
I understand the good critical reception. I just am not in that same boat.
Yeah.
I'm not with those people. So,
Totally get that.
now, Malignant getting good critical reception, I didn't understand.
Yeah.
Like, whatever good critical reception it did get, I didn't get that. But yeah.
All right. Well, that's the two things I've been watching. We've already covered that you watched Barbarian. What else have you been watching?
I watched a movie that also came out in 2022, Bodies Cubed, Bodies.
Oh, I want to see that.
Bodies.
It's supposed to be like a horror comedy.
Bodies everywhere.
But it
yeah,
has Pete Davidson in it.
does have Pete Davidson in it. That's right.
Okay.
Yes, it does. I'm not a big Pete Davidson fan, but I will say in this movie he didn't bother me as much because he wasn't being Pete Davidson, the wannabe comedian, and I say wannabe because I don't think he's very funny. Like seeing him on SNL or seeing some of his stand up, I've never thought he was funny. When Pete Davidson is being Pete Davidson, I'm not as big of a fan. I feel like he does enough different stuff in this film that he wasn't annoying to me. I did not like the movie though overall. I will say that. But if you're planning on watching it, I definitely will. I mean, I'm not going to spoil it anyway, but I'll keep my comments to a minimum. I didn't think it was terrible. It didn't work for me. I'll say that. But it is. I mean, you do know what it's about, basically. Like,
I think it's about like a bunch of rich people that go off someplace and they start getting killed. Is that?
Well,
close?
yeah. So there's like a hurricane about to hit. So they all kind of hole up in this house and just their idea is to have a hurricane party.
Gotcha.
And so yes, like things kind of escalate from there. So that's all I'll say about that. I will say I watched another movie about a month ago, which I actually wasn't going to mention on the show, not because I didn't like it, just because we only have a limited time to talk about things here. So. But I thought I would bring this up because it reminded me of this other movie. That movie is called Happy Times, which came out in, 2019, 2018. It's a few years old now. But that's about kind of a dinner party gone horribly wrong. Not taking place during in the middle of a hurricane or anything like that. But I found that movie to be way, way better than this.
Gotcha.
And again, I'm not saying that Bodies is a ripoff of Happy Times or anything like that. I just found some similarities in them. And overall, if I was going to watch, if I was going to pick one of the two movies, I'd say Happy Times is the better film. Happy Times, actually, I also found interesting because much of the dialogue, much of the spoken language in it is Hebrew. So it's got a lot of Israeli actors in it. They're in America. They're living in Los Angeles. But that they switch back and forth between English and Hebrew a lot in that movie. There's a ton of subtitles, but I found that interesting. I don't watch many movies where they speak Hebrew in it, so I thought that was pretty cool. But I like that movie overall. The other movie I was going to watch, or the other movie that I'll mention that I watched. So I mentioned a few months ago, probably, that I watched the latest Ty West film X. It was the latest at that time. He now has a prequel, or has had a prequel, I guess, for a little while, called Pearl. I watched Pearl.
I still want to watch X. So remind me, you like X.
I do like X. I do like X. And my intent actually was to watch Pearl and rewatch X, but I didn't have time, so I just watched Pearl. I like Pearl as well. I don't like Pearl as much as X, but I still think it's a very solid movie. I think if you like X, because X is a horror film. If you like X, Pearl is not. I mean, it's still classified as a horror film, and I get that classification, but to me, it's not in the same kind of vibe as X. It's a different kind of horror film. And again, it's more about how Pearl, kind of got to where she is or whatever, how she came to be, that sort of thing. But it's visually. There's some really, really cool visuals in it, and there's a fantastic performance by Mia Goth, who plays Pearl. I think she's really, really good in it. Now, is she going to get nominated for Academy Award or anything like that? No.
Is she in
But
X
she's
too?
really great. Yeah, she's in X. Yeah.
I didn't know if she it was played by a different actress and she's playing a younger version or whatever.
No.
In Pearl, okay.
She's in both. But I thought it was good overall.
Are those your favorite Ty West movies? Because he did House of the Devil.
I think so, yeah, because I like House of the Devil.
He did was it the Innkeepers?
I'd like that as well. I do like House of the Devil. I do like Innkeepers. I don't like the Sacrament or whatever it is. I don't like that. And I don't remember what else he's done.
The Valley of Violence, but I don't think you've seen that one yet.
Yeah, I would say X and Pearl are probably my favorites.
I really wanted to see those during October. I still might watch those here
Yeah.
soon because those are high on my list of horror movies that I want to catch up on. So awesome! I'm glad you like both of them. That makes me excited to see them.
Yeah.
All right. So that anything else on what we've been watching?
No. That's
All
it.
right. So you chose Lemora, and you think this is an interesting movie, especially because there's some metatextual about it, about a woman or a young girl becoming a woman.
Hmm.
And so, keeping that in mind, what movie did you decide to pair with this movie?
So I went back a few years before Lemora, all the way over to Czechoslovakia, and chose a film that, once again, like Lemora, I rented it back in the day on DVD from Netflix. I got the disc in the mail, but nowadays it's all highfalutin and it's in the Criterion Collection, and it's called
Fancy.
Valerie and Her Week of Wonders. We'll talk about that on Wednesday.
All right, guys. Well, that was Lemora and everything else. Please let us know what you think of Lemora. If you think it's a stone cold classic, or if you feel like kind of like we do, it's okay. Maybe me a little less than okay.
Yeah.
Leave a comment down below if you're watching this YouTube. Please like, subscribe, share, do all that social media stuff. It really does help. We really do appreciate that. And stay tuned next week as we find out what is in those Week of Wonders that Valerie has. We're going to find out. So we'll see you Wednesday, guys. Have a good one.